Hello, this is Bilal Siddiqui and you're watching Khuaabgaah Library Project. This is the chapter number 3 called 3 minutes of 10 minutes and 38 seconds by Elif Shafak. So this is going to be my personal analysis about this particular chapter. So as you know from the previous chapter that Elif was talking about the main protagonist's childhood. So that was when the time when the protagonist was only 60 years old, and now the person is now 19 years old, and now she's not back in that very place, not in her own hometown, rather in Istanbul. So now things are very different about this chapter. So this chapter does not tell a lot about the story, rather than about different places and different things and different setting which she finds herself in. So there's not much dialogues in this chapter, but what I really liked from this chapter, it gave very detailed description about the brothel and the streets where all the brothels were. So there were like 11 brothels which were totally talked about, and one in particular which was the one where the main protagonist is going to be living in. And so I learned a lot about things in this, in particular with how things work in like Turkey, because I didn't know this. I didn't know that Turkey, being a Muslim country, would actually legalize and have such set rules about like prostitution and these type of elements. So that was new to me. I'm not sure if all of the readers share the same thing, because I always treated Turkey as something not very religious. I know there are some form of liberalism there, but I did know for a fact that it is somewhat like Pakistan. So, but it's not. So, which I realized in reading this chapter, because when you read the chapter and you read about this brothel, so these are very like descriptive. These are like very, you can say, descriptive places, and these are like not discreet. These are very well known about everything is like very well known to the people living in the country. And even though it is specified to a certain area, so not everyone has to face it, but it's not like in the outskirts of the city. It is in the city, so there are popular places around. But we know that there's an industrial unit just besides it. So I think that's like a big thing. So there's an industrial unit, so you can imagine what type of location it is where these brothels are like allowed to exist. But they have some very special rules, which I'm not sure if I liked or not, but I really like the point that this is part of the information that we are learning. So that's not fiction, that's reality, that there are brothels in Turkey. So I'm not sure about the current era, but I'm pretty sure that Elif Shafak just wrote it like a couple of years back. So this is not like some old age stuff that we're talking about. So coming to the story, there's a lot of descriptions, and even the author and even like the main protagonist, because she's telling stories. So she, like in the start of the chapter, she goes like, okay, so from my childhood to brothel. Okay, I know this is like quite fast because I just like skipped a lot of my life, but this is how the brain works, and the brain does not work in a coherent way. And that's very funny to me, because the author is making rules here, right? So it's not like we are making rules, or like the chronological order that's not being followed. So that is somewhat amazing, because now we want to know what's the middle part about, because we all want to know how from a really, really amazing house in Vaughan and a girl belonging there just went absurd and like went to a brothel. So I'm not against like people who are going to seek that profession, but I am like really curious about, and maybe I am like, but it's a fictional story, so I'm not like going to be prejudiced about it from the very start. I really want to know the story, because that story has somewhat in it. I'm not going to justify that by the end of it, because it is wrong, what is wrong, but we'll see what happens after that. But there are many things which are mentioned, and at the end of this chapter there's a mention of Nalan, who is, so I don't know if it's like Nalan, because I like saying it like Nalan, but if it's like Nalan, so I'm like all right. So that person is mentioned, and there's a bonus chapter after this chapter which is called Nalan, my friend Nalan, something like that. So I'm going to be like reviewing that chapter too, but that chapter is going to take a bit from Layla's life to like the life of another person, and that's going to be interesting, I'm very sure. But another thing that I learned from this chapter was very amazing, that I had no idea how brothels work in like the world. I don't know how they work in my country or in other parts of the world, but in this particular chapter they actually tell that, so the brothel is like a big space, okay, so there are many female workers who are working whatever they are doing, and they have their own small, you can say, apartments, or you can say small rooms. And I'm not really sure if this was mentioned in this chapter or not, but I think it's not, that whether they live in this room all the time or is it just like their workplace. But even if it's their workplace, there are designated rooms, so everyone has a room. So every single individual, every single female worker has a room designated to her, and it's only used by her and her clients, right? So it's more like an office space, so everyone has their own room. And I'm not sure about how the revenue is going to work, and how is it commission based, is it like salary based. But I personally think it is more like commission based, because the person who is like running, who is like called Ma, or good Ma or bad Ma, and so she is mentioning that Layla is good because she is a hard worker and she earns good money. So I'm personally of the like belief that, okay, so there is going to be a cut for them, and there's going to be a cut for the owner of the whole brothel, right? So I'm not sure if all brothels work that way, but that is something that I learned, so that I really wanted to include in my analysis. Other than that, so there are distinct features about how we rip off certain people of their humanity, and this had happened in this chapter. There is this uncovering of the lives of people who we really despise, and prostitutes are like going to be number one on that list, because personally I have no idea how their lives are and what are their circumstances. And even though we can say maybe in different places that, okay, they are going because they were in some sort of bondage or in some sort of debt, or they were poor and they went there to like when the pangs of hunger actually hit them. But you cannot really understand their lives unless you actually talk to them, or unless you actually see their lives, how they are living lives. So even though these are like wild creatures, wild humans, for most of the people, they would consider them that, unless they obviously know them better. But now when you read about their lives, now when you actually relate to them, that they are actually human beings just like us, and they have feelings similar to us, and they also consider these small things like dirty and wrong and unclean, and like all these things, because they are very small things mentioned, that there's a parch there's like a brown spots there are like cigarette marks. And so all of these things are mentioned by a person who you can think that who has like sold their body for money in a discreet type of way. But even they have these type of feelings, so they're not like ripped off of their humanity. They do have their human side, and they treat it as their work side. So it's not like Layla has like completely gone dead from inside and just doing it for fun. I'm not sure why she's doing it right now, but I think in the coming chapters there will be places when it's going to be discussed that why she did what she did, because it is mentioned that she only arrived with 5 whatever currency they have in Turkey and some cents type of thing. So that's I'm very sure that there's something got to do with poverty dealing with her, and also the fact that she was sold by a couple, and that couple was like working with the government. So this is another point that I wanted to mention, that I don't know how these things work, but in this particular story, if there is a couple involved and they have government officials backing them up, so they are doing this trade, so they are living honorable lives. But look at what they are doing to these small children. Like Layla is only like 16 years old when she arrives at the brothel, and she's like sold out. So just think about it, that how bad things are. And it is true for many people that we rip off other people's humanity just for our own sake, and we live an honorable life. And some people do not take honor as something to be grateful for, but you have no idea how much an honor matters to every single human being in this world. And no matter how much you think you have been disgraced in life, if you do have honor in life, if you do have honor in your day-to-day activities, if you have honor at workplace, at your job, at your office, or at your school, university, at your house, at your family, that's a really big blessing. And do not ever let your mind tell you that you don't need to be grateful for that, because honor is a lot. And even if you get all the money in the world, and if you don't have honor, you don't have anything really. So that's going to be a wrap from my end. What do you think about this chapter, and what did you like, what did you not like, and what are the things that I maybe have skipped from this chapter, even though I loved reading this chapter. And it's been like some time that I've read this chapter, so I might have forgotten some things, but I'm pretty sure that the things that I really wanted to discuss, I have mentioned them. So looking forward for your views. Thank you for watching.